Please join with me in prayer. Let us pray. For all your goodness, I will keep on singing. 10,000 reasons for my heart to name. The sun comes up, a new day's dawning. It's time to sing your song again. And whatever may pass, whatever lies before me, let me still be singing when the evening comes. Amen. Well, good morning and God bless. And thank you, Shirley, for that engaging introduction. Much appreciated. It's great to be here this day. There are always memories, precious memories, and sacred memories of the remarkable people who have been part of First Metropolitan United Church. And it's also good to know that your wonderful, hard-working lead minister is actually getting a Sunday off. Hi, Sheila. Just last Sunday, we celebrated the 40th anniversary of Sheila's ordination. It was not the first time, and certainly it won't be the last, that I have heard such wonderful affirmations and appreciation of her ministry here at First Met. Megami and I were delighted to be able to add a few words of our own to that celebration. And now, today, I get to share with you about two things very close to my heart these days: hope and our place. In 1 Corinthians 13, we hear this wonderful ode to love. Love bears all things, believes all things, and so forth. And the concluding words are these: these three abide: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. Well, that may well be, but in my book, a very close second is hope. Because after all, where would any of us be without that gift called hope? Think about it now as we watch a short video, Blanche's story.
My life was changing for disaster a number of years ago, where I just hit the rock bottom and I found myself out on the streets. I lost hope. And once you lose hope, then everything else goes with it. I would probably put in a Kodak moment where I was cold and walking into the doors of our place. That's the transition started right there.
I would bump into Blanche at times and be worried about whether she was going to live or die. And she has been through abusive relationships. She's also been out on the street. And while she has a really strong spirit, all of those things can catch up with you. And at times when I would bump into her and see her, the most I can do is to hug her and say, you know, hi and check in with her. But I was nervous for her for many years, off and on.
My sister had gained a sanctuary away from the lifestyle that had brought on some of the challenges that she faced, you know, and I acknowledged that she was safe out here because of places like our place. She had somewhere to turn.
I found out that I got housed here. That was the beginning. That's when my life started changing.
She's transitioned from our place, which is transitional housing, into permanent housing that's hers.
I had never seen her go that far in her attempt to change her journey. But after she achieved housing, there was a newfound commitment. And I think the housing is what made the difference.
It's huge. I got a huge room, I got a huge living room, you know, I got my own patio, and it's gorgeous. It's, you know, I'm not dreaming anymore. This is reality.
Blanche is a volunteer in the nutrition bar now, and it reflects how well she's doing, that she's able to be here at our place and not be triggered by the behaviors around her, but also to be around the people that she cares about, and they can check in with her, because they too, in seeing how well she's doing, that gives them hope as well.
Service with a smile, come on. I'm grateful for them for helping me, right? So I want to give back to the people who helped me. So that's why I volunteer here, right? And I know all the people out there. So I give back to the people who gave to me, right?
That change didn't just impact Blanche. It impacted an entire family. That was 5 generations strong, waiting for her to come back home.
I am determined now. Yeah, I have hope now.
The first time I met Blanche, she gave me one of those infectious smiles of her, joy written right across her face. And it evoked a joy deep within me as well. It was the joy of someone who has discovered real hope, the kind that transforms lives. Hope is what our place offers. And that's why I felt honored to be asked to serve on the Our Place board. And I wonder, in your own life, in the world around you, where do you see hope? Where do you experience hope? Of all the wonderful scenes in that little video we just saw, the one I love the most is the one where she shows off her new home. Blanche is no longer out on the street. No, she's safe and secure, and so very, very grateful there in her home, her very own home. And it's as if the words of Micah have come to life. Micah declared a time when everyone beneath his or her own vine and fig tree shall live in peace and unafraid. Everyone with sustenance and shelter sufficient. Everyone in their own home, in peace, unafraid. Life on the street can at times be a scary business. Where will I find my next meal? Where can I get in out of this cold and damp and terrible bitter wind? Where am I going to find some sort of shelter for me tonight and the next night and the one after that? And it's as if Micah, 2,800 years ago, was looking at our city of Victoria, here and now, and painting for us this vision of hope. Now, vines and fig trees in his culture, they were seen as a blessing. They were providing shade from the hot sun and sustenance, and they became symbols of security and stability. His vision is God's vision. He's talking not just about hope, but God's hope for each and every one of us. And that's why he makes it a point that it's a vine and a fig tree, not just for some, but for everyone. For everyone. Now you need to know that Micah, 2,800 years ago, he was not off in some ivory tower or having just some very lovely, lazy time of it. No, he was living in the midst of a very difficult age. There was warfare and growing tension amongst the nations. And within his own country, there was this growing moral rot where the people were forgetting anything about love your neighbor as yourself. What did Micah do in such desperate days? Well, he did at least 3 things. First, he called out the corruption and the exploitation and the mistreatment of one's neighbor. He called out the misuse of power and possessions, and he lifted up the plight of the poor. That's the first thing. The second thing he did was he offered to his people, as he offers to you and me, a moral compass. Many of you will recognize these words. What does our God require of us, asked Micah, but to seek justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. There's a moral compass. You choose that as your moral compass, and then you're going to walk in a good way upon this earth, and you're going to head out in a good way as well. And then Micah does one thing more. In that dark time in the life of his nation, he lights a candle of hope. And in that light, he paints a picture. He shares that vision, the vines and the fig trees, the peace, and no one is afraid. This summer, I became keenly interested in biblical visions such as that of Micah and the other prophets. And the reason is this. There's an extraordinary book that is in the works these days. And it's a book that celebrates the life and ministry of Lois Wilson. Yes, Lois Wilson, the first woman moderator of the United Church of Canada, a former senator of Canada, a former president of the World Council of Churches, and all the rest of it. The foreword of this book will be written by Madame Justice Louise Arbour, and then there will follow 20 different chapters. And these will be written by people like Mary Jo Letty, Lloyd Axworthy, and Stan Mackay, the former moderator of the United Church and Cree minister. The first of these chapters will be exploring Lois's own personal faith. And we'll be looking at how her own faith, how it inspired and guided and empowered her throughout her life and ministry. And that first chapter is the one I was asked to write. I was very fortunate because the subject herself was still available. And we could have many telephone conversations and email exchanges. I had known for a long time that the works of the prophets, the Hebrew prophets in the Bible, were absolutely essential to Lois. You can hear their call to justice reflected in everything she says and does. But what I hadn't realized until this summer was that of equal importance for her were these visions of the prophets, visions of Micah and Isaiah and the others. Visions about plowshares and pruning hooks, about the lion and the lamb lying down together, about all the trees of the field clapping their hands as we go out for joy. Visions about vines and fig trees, not just for some, for everyone. Everyone. And it was these visions that inspired Lois. They renewed her hope even in some of the most desperate situations. And they empowered her to do the most amazing, daring things. For example, in South Africa, at the height of apartheid, Lois went and illegally interviewed the survivors of police torture. Think of it. Or again, in Argentina, while they were having that horror-filled, dirty war of theirs, Lois again goes and illegally arranges a rendezvous with the mothers of May Square, themselves such resilient, courageous women. Back in the early 80s, in South Korea, in one of its cities, there were a group of mainly students who were peacefully protesting for democracy, and they were massacred. Foreigners were discouraged from getting anywhere close to that city, but Lois went. Lois was there. And afterwards, there she is in the security, going through security at the airport. In her hat is a list of all the victims, those who died in the massacre. And in her shoe is another list of those people, the survivors with whom she had met. And those are going to go off to Amnesty International. And she knows full well if she gets found out, she's going to be whisked away to some darkened interrogation room where there will be no time for niceties. Friends, time and again, Lois risked her very life. She risked it all. And why? Because she heard the call for justice of the Hebrew prophets. And she saw the visions of the hope, God's hope for each and every one of us. And these things inspired her, they empowered her. And if they could do that for Lois, might they also do that for you and for me? These days, Lois is now 93 years old. Yet she isn't going back on her laurels. No, actually she's spending a lot of energy. She's very busy on a particular project. And the project is this. It's to be an advocate for the idea of an affordable, livable income for everyone. Now, I think that many of the family members at our place would be delighted to hear about that. This congregation, you've had a special relationship with our place. And on behalf of the board and staff, I want to thank you for that. It goes way back to the first days of the Open Door with Reverend Moon. And I think of people like Dr. Robin Krause, who was chair of the Open Door Board and worked with Lawrence Moon and Al Chiswick and all the rest of them. Many of you have volunteered for our place. Many of you have supported the angel gifts. Penny Bond, how many years has she been coordinating angel gifts here for this congregation? And for the last 3 years, she's been doing that for the entire region. And our thanks goes out to Penny. And on a day like this, I think of Helen Mackay. I can still see Helen. I can see her face. I can see her smile. I can hear her chuckle as she's standing just outside our fellowship hall here at First Metropolitan, welcoming the folks that are coming in for another inner-city dinner. She had such a warmth and respect for those people, and it was mutual. What a rapport she had. And how fortunate you and I are whenever we come across a mentor such as Helen. Nowadays, our place is continuing with its community center on Pandora, but it's also been expanding, and there are now 9 different locations. Before COVID, every day we were serving 1,200 meals, 1,400 snacks. We have been providing up to 400 units of housing and 150 transitional shelter spaces, including the ones that are right here at First Metropolitan. Thank you for that. You'll know that our place offers hot showers and educational opportunities, job skills, health care, addiction recovery services, donated clothing, and the United Church minister, Julianne Casmer and others, are providing spiritual care. And there's counseling and outreach services and a 60-bin storage facility. Now, one day, just in May, the annual point-in-time survey of the homeless took place in Greater Victoria. It involved over 150 people surveyed. And what did we find? Here's just a few things that were revealed. Age, these people first were homeless. 38% were under 18 years old when they first became homeless. 77% of these households, they're people on their own, alone. Another figure we come across is 84% of these folk have lived in Greater Victoria for over a year, and some for much longer. And that 90% have some sort of a health concern. Some of the leading ones include substance use, mental health, brain injury. These are not minor concerns. And of the people that come to our place, 25 to 30% of them are Indigenous. And so the board these days, board members are watching a course, an online course from the University of Alberta. It's a course on Indigenous history. When Dan Levy, the Canadian actor, said he was registering, do you know 64,000 of his followers on Twitter registered as well? And I'm very happy to hear that. I highly recommend the course to you. It is so informative. It has fresh insights for us all. And at the end of the service, you can go to the First Met website. There on the Advent at First Met, the first Sunday, you'll find the web link to the study program. You'll find the web link to the stats from the point in time study, and you'll find some connections with our place as well. Friends, it's about hope. Without hope, where would any of us be? And as Lois Wilson shows to us, God's hope is a very active thing. It gets you engaged with the world around you. You can't just sit on the sidelines and actually be a hope-filled person. It's impossible. I have lots of hope as I think, even in the midst of the COVID pandemic, how the staff at our place have been going the second mile. Our CEO, Julian Daly, is truly a remarkable person, bringing such positive energy. He brings this great mix of ability and compassion, his experience, his grace. For 11 years, he led a similar organization in Edmonton, and it became the largest organization of its type in that city. Before that, he was a number of years in London, England, working in some of the poorest districts of that great city. And a source of hope for me these days has been seeing the next generation of our place staff rise up to the challenge. You'll know that our place was asked to manage the Comfort Inn when BC Housing bought it. And shortly after that, we were asked also to manage 2 other hotels as well. It's no small challenge to do that. And we had some people my children's age who headed up a wonderful response. We were just very, very fortunate to have Leah and Jordan step up and their team put things into place. One of the first things they did, by the way, was they made sure there was a photo of every new resident in the hotels so that staff could quickly get to know them. After a while, we were hearing that some of those photos, they thought that for some of them, they would have to be retaken. Any idea why? They had to be retaken because some of those people were looking so much better now, so much healthier now. They had shelter they could rely on. They had some stability in their lives. They had their vine and fig tree. And things, good things, were happening. Right now, almost 20 people in those hotels, our place is helping them with their applications to get into independent living. And whenever someone gets into independent living, there's this wonderful domino effect. That person moves on to independent living. Somebody else from one of the shelters, say here at First Metropolitan, they get to move up into one of the hotels. And somebody who's out on the street gets to move into one of the temporary shelters. So there's this domino effect, and it's well worth pursuing. Well worth it. The last thing I've mentioned about our place, what we're doing just now, since November the 1st, with an arrangement with Kool-Aid, we are renting space in Kool-Aid to provide an additional 20 temporary spots for people to get through this winter season. And whether it's 20 or 220, it's not about the numbers. It's about the people that those numbers represent. It's about somebody's son or daughter, somebody's grandchild or sibling. It's about that person's life, their life story. And I'm struck how often I will meet somebody who appears to have done very well by worldly standards, very accomplished. And then I discover there's a family member out on the street. I'm surprised how often that has been my experience. So it can be something that touches any family. Any family. But each of these people, they have their own story. And I believe that if only the people of this city actually knew more of those stories, why, there would be a revolution of kindness. And so, as a way to support such a revolution, let me close with one last story. And I hope you'll share it with others. You can find the original story right on the Our Place website. It's Benoit's story. And here he is. As a child growing up in Montreal, Benoit had a typical Canadian childhood. But as soon as he reached his youth years, a predator in his larger family turned Benoit's world into one of shame, great anger, despair. He ran away from home at age 14. His poor parents had no idea why the sudden change. And at age 16, he ran away for good. Soon he was dealing drugs, committing criminal offenses, getting into fights. Soon after that, he was arrested, and he was placed in jail. At one point, in trying to make a fresh, good start for his life, he came out here to Victoria. But alas, with not much education, no prospects, soon he drifted back to his former ways, his old habits. And then a wake-up call. A friend committed suicide. And he figured that it was now or never if he was going to change his ways. So he got into detox, and afterwards he started hanging out at the open door, now known as Our Place. One day, a janitor for the open door didn't show up. So Bob Frank, the facilities manager, a wonderful person, he tapped Benoit's shoulder and said, "Would you like to fill in today?" And so what began as a last-minute, one-day fill-in gradually became steady employment. And Benoit loved being a janitor. He said the people around him could see that he was changing. They'd come up to him and ask for his advice. And he said, when I tell them that I know what struggle is, they can see it in my eyes. Well, somebody else saw something, and that was Bob Frank. He saw how Benoit related to many of the family members. And so he talked to Jordan Cooper, who was then the outreach manager, and said, "Do you think Benoit might be trained to become one of our outreach workers?" Benoit says, "Oh, that's when the hard work really began." And he continued to blossom until now, in these recent months, he's one of our lead outreach workers. At our place, Benoit also met his wife, Tracy. She was volunteering with her mom. And he said, she caught my eye, and I asked her out for a coffee. And now we're so happy together with 2 beautiful twin daughters. And he still keeps in touch regularly with his mother back in Montreal. As he reflects, his eyes well up with tears. And he says, "I became the person I thought that at 16 I could never become." And he adds, "It's a blessing. It's a blessing to be able to help the person I once was." Indeed, it is a blessing. And today I give thanks for Blanche and Benoit and for the hope that they have discovered. I give thanks for the hope that they share with others. I give thanks for the hope that our place offers every day, every night. I give thanks for the gift of the prophets, for the visions they share with us of life as God intends and hopes for us, that we might also be inspired like our friend Lois Wilson. Everyone beneath their own vine and fig tree shall live in peace and unafraid. Let it be so. Let it be so. Amen.